Okay, I'm afar away from the stage, but regardless, the panel is ready to begin. Hand over to our moderator, Krysta. Take it away.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, can everybody in the room kind of hear me? Oh, there we go. We got a little bit going on. So I want to just welcome everybody into the main room. I'm really excited to be a part of this panel. My name is Krysta Rayford. I also perform under the name K.Raydio. I've been a part of the Giant Steps family since 2011, and I'm really excited to be a part of this panel, which is about the challenges of being yourself. One of the parts of this panel, and we're going to get into introducing everybody who's a part of this panel, but before we get into that, I just want everybody real quick give it up for TK, who's sitting right next to me. Right. Next to TK, we have Leah. Give it up for Leah. Next to Leah, we have Bo. Give it up for Bo. And last but certainly not least, we have Tommy at the end of the couch. So in getting into this panel and talking about being unapologetically, unabashedly yourself, everybody has the different Giant Step programs, and we have the different blurbs and summaries of what our bios are. But I think it's really important for a panel of this nature, for each one of these people up on these stage to kind of give their own proper introduction. And when I think it comes to the challenges of being yourself, you have to first identify who you are, who you is. So thinking about identity, going around doesn't have to be in order. When you identify who you are and you introduce yourself to the world, how would you like to be identified or introduced?
All right, I guess money-making TK. No, I'm sorry. I got crazy. I'm TK, and I'm a audio producer. I make radio and podcasts and all that good stuff. But I like to be identified as a person that connects other people and also is concerned with the voices, accents, dialects, and languages that make us all different, but still the same. So I'm an advocate for all language.
Very nice, thank you.
Wow, I feel like a kindred spirit already. I'm Leah. Job title-wise, I write and direct a lot of theater. But identity-wise, I think I've had a lot of careers and a lot of job titles. And the unifying thread is probably I'm the person who notices the person who got left out and brings them in. And I'm the person who notices that one part of the spectrum is still in the spectrum. So I don't know the word for that, but I guess I'm a spectrum widener and a people includer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bo, and I guess I describe myself as a possibilian. That means I just really think that there's no right answer to do a lot of things, but I believe that there's many possibilities, so I really just spend a lot of my time thinking about what to do.
Greetings, I am Tommy Beevas, and I tend to identify myself more as a Jamaican first of all, interestingly enough, who is a philanthropist and a social investor in his global village. And so my career path has supported that. When I was in Washington, D.C., I did a lot of community relations type stuff, and that's what brought me to Minnesota, where I was doing global community relations. And then eventually I went off to focus on again, my most authentic self, my Jamaican side, in creating Pimento Jamaican Kitchen.
Wonderful. So give it up for all of our panelists and their introduction. When we talk about challenges about being yourself, and we were kind of discussing a little bit before we came on stage, how that can kind of be broken down into both external factors and then internal factors. Let's start with internal and doing self-reflection, which can be kind of tough. This can be present, what you're working through right now. It could be something from the past. But one of the key components to Giant Steps is, with having panelists on stage, people in the audience seeing a reflection of themselves and maybe building or learning from the opportunities or the circumstances that others have been through. So I thought about, just as a general question, can you tell the audience or all of us about a time where you got in your own way? It could be personally, it could be professionally, could be currently something you're working through, or in the past. And you don't have to go in order. Whoever feels like they got it on the tip of their tongues, go for it.
I guess I think this is a general one, but sometimes I struggle with believing, not sometimes, forget it, y'all, all the time, right? And I've just recently started getting better with believing that I can, or I belong, right? That I belong here with all of y'all, that I don't have to be invited to places, that I could show up, make the thing, and it's done, right? I'm a professional because I made it and it exists in the world. And for a long time, I think maybe like these past 2 years, I feel myself stepping into my own, right? Which means I've been doing this professionally since '05. So I've just been since '05 to like 2 years ago, just effing around, not believing in myself, right? Walking into these rooms mad timid and shit, like, no, I'm amazing, and I'm just realizing this, like, in the last 2 years. Like, for real, you know? So, like, it's weird because I know that now, and I knew that then, but literally I can feel it in my body, the difference.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Ditto. I mean, I'll get more specific. So I'm the first person in my family to get a college degree, and I got it late in life. I'm the only person in my family who didn't have a severe mental illness or disability. We were a welfare family. I was homeless when I was 13. I have a laundry list. I could go on. It's insane. But that list, in almost every sphere I walk into, makes me think, I'm not going to know the rules here. They're going to see me. They're going to see through me, and they're going to go, you don't belong here, right? And yet, every sphere I eventually get brave enough to go into so far, I have not only been able to figure out the rules, the language, the etiquette, the clothes. I have also discovered that bringing my own set of rules, my own language, my own etiquette was actually valued because it was different, right? The funny thing, though, is that no matter how many times I learn that lesson, I can still walk into a new sphere and feel terrified and think, I'm going to get kicked out this time, right? So I'm still learning it with every single new space I walk into.
Well, I think they've said a lot of what I would have said, which is really just believing in yourself. But also, I think that at different times in your life, you have different kinds of resources, and trying to really figure out how to utilize those kinds of resources to support you to get over that hump, right? Because I think that, I mean, in my 20s, I just didn't have as many or as much social capital as I do now, right? And so being able to understand that I needed to be able to have that in order to do certain things was important. And now that I have it, my question is always like, how do I not run too fast, especially when I really care about young folks who care about the same things that I care about, and I know how easy it is for me to go ahead and do something and not wait for them, right? So I think part of what I struggle with is making sure that timing is right, and then there have been times where I didn't take opportunities that I probably should have, and so, you know, how to not be weighted down by those decisions that you didn't make, and to just still move ahead.
Interesting enough, I approach it, I come from it with a different perspective, because as a Jamaican, I grew up in a pretty influential family, and so therefore I didn't feel, it's not that I didn't feel as though I belonged, I felt as though I belonged in too many places at once. Yeah. And so because of the expectation that was on me, I really wanted to my drive was just so much. And it wasn't until recently did I start recognizing how much I get in my own way, as my wife who just walked in calls it, Tommy too muchism, you know. And so now I have to scale back, and I've had to scale back over the recent years to ask myself, what am I doing this for? So am I doing this for me because it makes me happy? Am I doing it because my family expectation, or because of duty, as I call it? Or am I doing it for my community? You know what I'm saying? If I'm out there serving as an ambassador, am I doing it for my larger community? And so I tend to get in my own own way. I used to get in my own way a lot when I'm trying to do too much for all the wrong reasons. And now I'm trying to scale back to do the right things for the right reasons.
I think, Tommy, it's interesting you talk about like that internal wheel mentally of like sometimes getting into these cyclical things within your mind that keep you stuck. I'm a singer-songwriter, but then I'm also a youth development specialist, and I walk this line of different identities. You all have kind of spoken about having different positions, different identities. Do you find the aspects of your identities ever bumping up against one another or contradicting one another? And what is that like for you? How do you deal with that?
I felt like you were gonna go.
No, I'm just like thinking so many sides of it. Crazy Gemini, I have so many sides I conflict. Because one where I think of it, I'm a very strong business-minded person with, I believe in business, but at the same time, business's role in society is in conflict. And so thankfully, I've been able to straddle both sides and experience both sides. But internally, there's certain parts of me that as a business person just isn't necessarily all businessy, if you will. And so it's just so hard trying to find a good balance when you're trying to be your authentic self, trying to be a business leader, and try to be a good citizen.
I don't know if this, for me, I take it kind of a different way. I don't know if this takes us down another road, but showing people the duality of you, right? And living your full self. So for me, that means, my thing that I do, for me, I have a morning show and we talk about all the issues. And for me, all the issues are all the issues, right? Black Lives Matter, number 45, who shall not be named. You know what I'm saying? Talking about all the things, issues and whatever. And then having to go into an interview and they act as if I cannot translate those skills elsewhere, right? And I'm like, I just showed you how full my skill set is, right? But you are concerned with my movement work and whether that fits into your thing. It's really bizarre because I've been going, let's be real here. We real? All right.
Yes, it's encouraged.
I've been going on job interviews, guys, right? And I think this is part of being like the authentic individual. Do I go to the job interview and what do I leave off the resume? And I've been finding this bizarre thing of, I think since nowadays things are so politicized that people are scared of people that speak on these issues. So I'm applying for jobs that have nothing to do with politics, and they're bringing that into the interview. And I almost feel like it's unfair, right? Because I'm bringing you tangible skills. Whether or not it's political, I can do the job. They have been turning that around on me in interviews and saying, instead of saying, well, just say, we don't think you're right for it. Or they've turned it around and said, do you think this job is enough for you? Oh, wow. And that's, to me, code for, you too righteous and we not ready for all that. That's what it says to me. Because why would you ask that? So me bringing the way I am in the world is very present. So I can't hide it. I can't bury that in a bunch of Google pages. It's just there. But also, I try to combat that by doing many different things. And it's really weird because the thing that they pick to discount me is the thing that the community celebrates me for. So what do I refuse to hide it, So I just combat that by making more products. So I got this product, that product, entertainment product, political product, skills. So they can't tell me that it's me. That's how I know that it's them. It's freaky. So, yeah.
No, that's profound, because I think it's interesting because we are becoming in society, just even when you look at economics, it's to a place where we have so many different facets of aspects of who we are. But from a professional realm and in the political times that we're in now, sometimes you're making a political statement by just walking into a room and being who you are.
That too.
Yes. So just going off of that, does anybody else have similar experiences, or did anything kind of pop into their head off of what TK just said?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just add that I do think that we have a really hard time letting people be themselves, right? Even though we talk about it so much, and people really say they value, being authentic, and they want people to be authentic. The reality is, when you're out there in the world, we want to define people one-dimensionally. And I think that is really tough, especially if you're a woman, you're a person of color, LGBT. I mean, I think we've come up with all of these categories, and they're really important. I think from the movement frame, we talk about it as intersectionality, right? About letting people be their whole selves. But in the work world, it's really hard because employers are trying to understand who you are, and so I mean, I've had friends who go in, and because they're Asian, they'll be asked like, well, this job, we don't apply for visas, like assuming that she's a foreigner, right? So just all kinds of stereotypes that play out, and I think it's our challenge, right? How do we say things like we want people to be authentic, and actually create a culture of practice where that is true, and know that every human being cares about something, right? Or multiple things, and that's what makes them, right? But then not punish them for it in the workplace, to think that, I mean, why do we think, and I get this a lot because I like to do a lot of things, and it's really confusing for people when they look at my resume to be like, what, you own a business? You run a nonprofit? I said, yes. And I said, but why do we accept that a white man, sorry, white men, can be out there and they can be a CEO and run 18 businesses and nobody will say anything, but when they look at me, they're like, no, you can't do all of that, right?
It's like stay marginalized. Stay in the margins. Yes.
Or they assume you can't be doing it all well.
Right. Right, or you must not be particularly good at anything, and that's why and I'm saying, no, it's because I'm exceptional at everything.
Snaps to that.
And also, I like everything, right?
And it also speaks to access, right? Why do we have to create all these products or skill sets or do all these things? Well, access is an issue. Yes. So I make a business next to my nonprofit so that I can flip that money and make another nonprofit. Come on, y'all, like, all I really wanted was stability and healthcare. I don't really want to hang out with the corporates. I just want the amenities. But meanwhile, I got a business and a nonprofit, right?
Well, kind of going off of that, there was, oh no, go ahead, Leah. You got a point.
I was just going to riff off of this idea of you're more than one thing, right? So quite a few years ago now, I kind of went on record and said some really strong, harsh things about a very large institution in town, and it got quoted and it got propagated, and it had an effect which made me deeply, deeply proud. But then I discovered that for many years after, I would walk into certain rooms and I was no longer an artist walking in the room, I was the person who said that thing. Which sometimes meant people walked up to me, people who would never give me the time of day, wanted somehow for me to absolve them from any past association with the thing I was criticizing. So I'd find myself in these super awkward conversations like, hi, I just want to tell you all the really good things that have happened since you said that thing and my part that I played in them. Yeah. And I don't know what to say to that. Like, yeah, good job. I don't really have the folder full of gold stars that get handed out for that. Also, by the way, I'm a person with all these other dimensions to me besides my activism, right? Activism's a big part of what matters to me, but I'm also an artist. And I find the duality of being an activist, which I think maybe any of us with consciences aspire to be, right? Like it's not just a job title. But it's hard to still walk in the room as an artist once you've kind of rattled everybody as an activist. And if anything, it kind of makes them question your artistic seriousness. You know, and it's like, to me, these things go together. I am the artist I am because of the things I care about, right? And I can be an effective activist because of the creativity that I have. So they're interwoven, but I feel this constant pressure to be seen as one or the other.
Go for it, Tommy.
Not that I want to rock the boat, but I'm just curious because I really don't know the answer to this question. Is there a mix, a ratio, or a boundary, or some sort of a line between the righteousness that TK talks about and the effectiveness that one would imagine that they would want? So, for example, if I am going to move forward issue X, I need to be in this circle align with that company, align with that organization, and therefore I have to, again, in terms of authenticity, the other side of you have to sort of like represent in that arena. And then on the other side of it, though, is still your righteousness. So should there be a mix, a boundary, or ratio, or anything like that as to where we can figure out how to balance our righteousness with also being effective?
I think it's a fine line. Like, and again, I'm not out here like my show. Like, I'm not out here saying wild things. This is all stuff that we've all in this room you've seen it on late night comedy shows. So it's not like some wild shit I'm out here spewing, but it's enough to rattle people, right? And then forget about that. Let's talk about my presentation, right? I'm a black woman. There's connotations there, right? Perhaps she'll be aggressive. Maybe she's not a team player. So I go in there, I have to smile extra, right? I have to be able to defend all the things. Then I have to show just, y'all know how they say, people, whatever, say we have to be twice as good at the thing than, white people. So like there's that. So my presentation, then let's take it, my hair, right? It still holds a lot of power for people visually. So, maybe she has locks because she's whatever, believes in whatever. So like, I'm battling all these external things, and in my mind, I'm just like, I just wanna be a part of the team. And somehow, there's a place that these people will go. They'll go so far as say, you're doing great work, keep going, you're brave, right? So the messaging is good. But when it comes to, to become a part of us, that's too much. Right? Just existing is too much. And there's no line. I can't toe that. I'm not gonna cut my hair off. I'm not gonna bleach my skin. I'm not gonna stop being a normal human being that has opinions about things. To me, there's no line. There's no line because it's just me walking into a room. I have identifiable, quantifiable things that they want, but something is stopping them from choosing me. So we have to stop trying to be chosen.
Well, and it's a perfect lead-in because I wanted to kind of then shift to the external factors and talking about conformity and what that means, especially as an entrepreneur, as a professional. Speaking from your own personal respective experiences, have there been circumstances or situations where you've either had to adapt or shift or recreate yourself in the eyes of, it could be an institution, it could be structurally, for the sake of employment, funding, respect, in any of those regards? Have you had to put your integrity on the line or put your true self on the line for other opportunities? And have you taken them, or have you gone, nah?
Yeah, maybe I'll just share an experience. So I've been doing or supporting movement work for a long time, and I had a visit to a funder that we had been working with for a long time, and it was the time to make a big ask, right? So we decided, they can't keep just throwing us dimes and then expecting us to build a movement. So we need to actually build to have a big ask, because if they really cared about this, they would put in a lot more and not make us grovel for all these things. And so we go into the meeting, and after the meeting, this was like a high-level meeting, so all the VPs and program officers, and it's a huge foundation. So, and at the end of that conversation, they basically said, well, have you gone to Toyota? And so, assuming that because we're Asian, we should go to an Asian company to consider getting some support, right? And so, so in that case, we could have all been very upset and blown up, but we realized that this is the behavior of people who have gone into institutions and assumed that that money is theirs, right? And so we needed to just step back and leave that space and then figure out what our strategy was, because we know that this is problematic, right? That even the best of us go into institutions and we take on the cultures of these institutions, and we forget what we're there for. And so, so the point of that story is that it really, you anticipate a lot of things when you go into these things, because you're preparing to answer all kinds of questions about why you're asking for that amount and all of these things. Yeah. But you don't expect somebody to be blatantly both racist and also not get it, right? That this is stolen money, because I essentially think all foundation dollars are stolen money. It could be going to a public coffer for everyone, but instead we protect rich people and allow them to create foundations. And I say that having been somebody who worked in foundations. So, and that when we go in and we take these jobs and we forget our heart and soul, that we actually care about movements, right? And our job is to try to think about how to support the movements but not become barriers to it. So we had to step out of that room, and it took us another 2 years to keep going back to them and say, you don't get it. We're not asking for you to throw us a dime in the, in a tin cup. If you believe in this, you got to do something different. And we're not going to another foundation because we started this with you, right? So there's a lot of holding back and bringing people along, because in that room people believe in it. But the problem is when you go into institutions and you assume the culture of that institution and you forget your heart and soul and what you're there for, I think that it makes you, I think it's the reason why so many of our groups don't ever go back, right? Because you may not get the Toyota question, but you'll get another thing, right? About, have you tried something else? Or the big is too ask, or, too big, or you're so, you're one artist. Why should we fund one artist, So I think it's, for me, it just, that experience really, I hold it to this day because it's a great reminder of what happens when even good people go into institutions, and what we have to be, have conviction for in ourselves and in our belief about what we're trying to do.
My story is about a foundation too. Let's pick on all the foundations.
That's good.
So this was many years ago. I was running the Minnesota Fringe Festival, and we had a corporate foundation that was a significant sponsor. If I remember the numbers right, they gave us $45,000 a year, and our budget was $350,000, so more than 10%. And the Fringe Festival, if you don't know, is an uncurated festival. They chose who's in it by lottery, and then they can do whatever they want as long as it's not, physically dangerous to anybody. And a mistake was made, and the people at this corporation got to see an early view of the program, and they saw that one of the shows in our teen Fringe had a title that they found offensive, and their logo was too close to a title they found offensive. And they called me and said, yeah, we're going to need you to change that title. And I laughed and said, we're an uncurated festival. Well, it means we're also uncensored. And they're like, yeah, no, seriously, you have to change the title. And I was like, we can't do that. And they said, well, then we can't fund you. this is like a month before the festival, we were sort of counting on that money, right? And I stopped myself from telling them to fuck off. And I was like, whoa, Leah, you have a board of directors. That's not, you don't get to, okay. So I went back to my board and said, what do we do? And also, by the way, if somebody's going to censor these teenagers, I'm not making that call, one of you. And to my great delight, everybody on the board had a vigorous hour-long conversation, at the end of which they unanimously voted to tell this corporation to fuck off. Wow. And it was not only, of course, deeply satisfying and terrifying, because then we had to go find $45,000. But it was the single most catalytic event to happen in my 6 years at that organization, at that board of directors, because they had to ask themselves what mattered more. It wasn't just me as executive director saying what mattered more. They had to, and you know how hard it is to put boards' feet to the fire, let's be honest, right? They're like, yeah, wait, risk? Right? But they showed up. They said, no, you know what? In fact, this is part of what defines who we are. And it changed how they operated as a board, and it changed how we operated as an organization, and how bravely we spoke our mission. Because in that moment, we had to say, you have to choose between these two things, right? And they chose. Yeah, it was really, really cool. I mean, not just personally satisfying, but catalytic to the organization. And so I'll just never forget that like, not only can you survive the no, or the racism, or the stupidity, or the ignorance, but you can become stronger for it, whether as an individual or an organization.
And like the word, like institution, like it just seems like it's not a good word, right? I think of prisons, I think of mental home. You know what I'm saying? I don't think of institutions. Do I want to be part of that, right? Like, what am I bringing myself to be part of? Now, let's say when you think of walking away, when you think of, wow, they walked away from $45,000, what about if you said yes, right? When someone says yes and they like take your money, you also got to think of what they gave up to say yes, so that they could do their dream, you know what I'm saying? And I think people think, oh, like $45,000 is a lot of money and it's a gift, but it's not the end all be all. And as the person giving, you have to realize as the giver that people made a sacrifice to take your money. You know? I don't know, I think about it.
And yet here I am, who used to be that guy on the other side of the desk. Because 5 years ago, look, my old 5 years ago self would laugh at who I am today hysterically, because 5 years ago I was that guy, the director of the suit, who was reviewing your grants and had things to say. But the funny part about it, which goes back to what we're talking about, what I was asking about earlier, is the effectiveness question. Because back then, my authenticity has evolved as my goals evolved. And so back then, my goal was to be a corporate responsibility leader, ensuring that we're finding the right programs to invest in. You know, and so back then, my fashion, my style, my cadence, my everything was very different. And yet, as my goals then shifted over to the more entrepreneurial side, I then sort of started finding a sense of freedom in freedom, you know, and yet so that's why I'm struggling, because I'm like, I understand being on the other side where effectiveness is important, where you have to look the part to get the $45,000 and or to write the $45,000 check. And then on the other side, I'm like, and yet this righteousness, this authenticity, this freedom to be who you really are, it's so much more gratifying and so much more rewarding in the long run, because now you can actually channel all your energy into something that seems so much more natural and so much more easy, to where you don't have to be worried about struggling with the barriers and the hurdles and the differences that, you know, different hats that you have to be switching, but now you can just be yourself. And that's one of the beauties about being in your entrepreneurial side, on the entrepreneurial side and the artistic side, where you can just be free.
I think that's wonderful. Give it up for them, everybody, because I feel like those were some very genuine answers. And it can be tough to speak on the not so wonderful parts, the stuff when you move away from certain aspects as you become truer in who you are. It can be hard sometimes to shed yourself of, like you said, these institutions or these notions that as you're learning who you are, you're kind of shedding certain things. I just want to check real quick, where is the time? So Q&A, we're at the Q&A, and this is perfect. Just kind of going into the Q&A, thinking about imposter syndrome too, that was something that, in terms of touching on, if anybody wants to bring that up, please do. Just a nudge. So do we have anyone that would like to start off with the question? Not quite? Okay, well, I'm going to start off with this one and see if it leads to somebody else. Is that cool? So for the audience, for the sake of everybody here, let's say there's somebody who's sitting out here who is really struggling with duality. Maybe you're in a place of employment where you're not able to be your true self, or maybe you're understanding that you are somebody that you didn't recognize a few years ago. When you look at imposter syndrome and the voice inside your head that I'm not blank enough, how can I do this? You know, there's the trajectory of success, but there are ebbs and flows. Can any of you speak on your own experiences with imposter syndrome, and how do you deal with it?
All right.
You go first.
I'm the biggest imposter. Is what you're saying. I would say, don't be stupid. You know, if you know you have to, and if you have to make certain sacrifices, it's up to you, because you have to live with yourself. I know that back in my good old days when I was in corporate America as a wonderful director, rocking the suits all day, every day, at that point I was still being authentic myself, because that was my goal. You know, that's who I wanted to be. And so, yes, I may have made a lot of sacrifices back then, as on the righteous side or not, but at the same time, I knew I could sleep well at night because I was doing it for the greater good. So I might not be rocking my dreadlocks, but at least I can write $1 million check to a sub-Saharan African literal adoption agency, you know. And so because I wanted to be effective, I wanted to have access, I wanted to have the resources to affect the change that I wanted to affect, I was quite comfortable rocking the suits every single day. And so again, you have to know what your goals are, and whatever makes you sleep well at nights is how you can figure out to what extent you can continue to enjoy the role of imposter. Jamaicans have a saying, when your hand is in a lion's mouth, you take your time and pull it out. So while you're still stuck in your current roles, take your time, build, plan, and then when you have the opportunity, you can take your hand out and knock the crap out of that lion. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But be smart about it.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I come from a long time of, I'm Caribbean as well. So, you know, I know, like, we got to work a lot. We have to do things. And also, I feel like, and I think this is a lot of ethnicities from not America, right? We are culturally trained a certain way. So our paths by our family, they teach a man to fish, and the only way my family knew how to teach me how to fish was to go into to healthcare, right? So I was a nurse for 17 years. Wow. I just quit my day job earlier this year, but I was doing that plus radio. Had feet in both ponds, and I had to be these two different people, and then something had to give. And when I was getting sick, y'all, physically. Depression started to set in. The version of me that's talking to you today is probably the happiest I've been in 2017. So when we're teaching our children how to fish, do they even want that fish? Do they like to fish for salmon? I was out here looking for a different food, you know? So we have to pay attention to what they like. But I did use that money to encourage my pursuits, right? Always taking classes. I didn't want to give people any excuse to say, oh, you didn't know enough. What were you doing between 2000 and 2017? Oh, I was doing that, and I was also doing this. How? Because I took my night job money and flipped it into these XYZ things. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I would have loved to take a shorter route to this place. But maybe that wasn't my path. I couldn't be here with y'all today. But honestly, you fight it by fighting it. That's it.
If I could jump on that, you said something had to give. And usually that's what happens. So take your time, keep your hand in the lion's mouth as long as you can. But you will know when something has to give.
Yeah.
And for me, it was when I recognized that my goals were no longer aligned with the organization or the institution's goals. That's when I'm like, all right, enough is enough. Time to drop the mic and step away. So feel free to talk about when you recognize that something had to give and what your something had to give was.
Well, for me, it was mostly the health things, right? Because you can't stop that. And then I was like, damn, if something happens to me, I can't do the things that I feel I was called to do. So, and also when you are feeling depressed or you're in a state of depression and you know it, and you've got to the place where you want to change it, that's like, I didn't know what it was before. Before I thought I was just tired. No, there's no such thing as tired for 13 hours. I just rested for 13 hours. That's not tired, that's something else. And I stayed like 5, 6, 7 years being tired like that. I realized I wasn't seeing my community. I wasn't fellowshipping with people. Guess what? I figured it out. I got a therapist. I decided to just say, F it. I can't fish for salmon anymore. I'm fishing for the other things that I want. And I found my tribe, right? My radio people, my Giant Steps family, creative entrepreneurs like yourself that get it, right? My tribe, I love my mama, but she's not my tribe. She's my mama. And I cannot live to perpetuate what they've trained me to do. I can now train my next, if there's a next, you know what I'm saying?
I think I just want to add on to that point about how critical it is for us to understand the community that we need that really wants to foster our ability to be thriving versus when we are just in survival mode, and how much we give up when we are just trying to survive, right? You take jobs that you probably don't want to do, or you do things that are not really, what you're good at, right? And I think that's a big part of the imposter syndrome, is when you're forced into a situation where you have to take something and pretend that you are something that you're not. And I have to say, I think that we probably come from communities where we have many lessons in survival, and our people have had to pretend to be a lot of things in order to just survive. And so the question is, what do we do now in order to recognize that sooner, so that we are not kept in survival mode, but we are actually creating communities that really help us flourish and do what we really love and want to do.
Awesome. Do we have a question over here? Sorry, Leah. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Levi. You're all amazing. So in my personal experience, as I've moved towards living my true self, that has made me closer to also finding parts of myself that I don't think are awesome. So I wonder if that's anything y'all have experienced, and how do you keep moving in this authentic way forward and building who you are into your work while trying to address and maybe make internal change, or deciding how you're going to cope with this aspect of yourself that maybe is not part of what you want to express out into the world? I don't know if that's something that has happened for any of y'all.
Try to reiterate it. As he's finding his more authentic self, right? Let me know if I'm going there. He's uncovering parts that are not so great that he wants to work through, yeah? And how are we doing that? I'll take it if you don't play, because I could be here all day. Listen, I just got therapy in like 2015, so I'm feeling it today. But I'm uncovering a lot of shit too. But I'm realizing I'm only uncovering it because I feel so much better about things in general, right? All the dark clouds are going away because survival mode. I was functioning as a survivor. Now I'm functioning as a thriver. And to thrive, you have to have things, right? You have to be secure in how you feel and how those things make you feel. Do you feel happy? Now that you feel happy, okay, now I can go pursue the friendships that I haven't been cultivating because of survival mode. Maybe I haven't been as nice to people as I should have been, which was a thing for me, right? because I don't have time. I'm tired. I'm busy. I can't. And that's what I was realizing. I was alienating my friends. And so now I'm going backwards, and I'm like, yo, calling, and I'm spending time, and I'm helping however, right? That's kind of what I'm finding. As the clouds go away, that I'm able to like identify and then see how to figure out, like, can I rebuild these relationships?
I think on my side, I call it, I went through some major identity crisis when I was switching from the corporate side to the entrepreneurial side. And I think when I look back, two areas where I struggled with and still struggle with today are my expectations that of people. So I have such high expectations, but I then had to recognize that I'm no longer in the same space working with the same tribe. It's a different tribe, and so I have to adjust my expectations accordingly. Otherwise, I'll just keep disappointing myself and and people keep disappointing me. And so I used to put that a lot on them, and so now I've learned to help myself figure out how to better manage my expectations, because that's not their problem, it's mine. And then the second part of it is, I used to be a major worrier, and so I panicked about a lot of things, but now when you're on your own, being an entrepreneur, you panic way more. And so the struggle that one has to be aware of in a new space is how to find joy, peace, and harmony, so therefore you can continue to be healthy when you're making a transition from whether you want to call it your imposter self to your true self, or from your former tribe to your new tribe and all that. So as part of being authentic, you have to definitely have that growth mindset and be vulnerable and ask yourself, seriously, what is it that's causing that knot in my stomach? And then you actually have to be radical to go after trying to overcompensate, if you will, to help yourself get through it. But it's not easy.
Yeah. Well, I'll just add, I think the last panel talked a lot about being sort of kind to yourself, right? Yeah. That and that it's a journey of kind of living out your truth. And when you do that, you will discover that you've made many mistakes, and part of it is to be kind, because we are trying to be more evolved, but we are not perfect people, and we've made bad decisions. And when you realize that, I think part of it is to not do more harm to yourself, but to be kind and to speak that truth. And so I find that as I am aging, I really appreciate those spaces where I can talk about my mistakes and learn a bit more, and also own up to the times that I've made bad decisions, right? Or decided things where I wasn't fully informed, or just really accepted that certain kinds of constructs about who I was at that time. And I think that's hard, because it means that there were people that you hurt along the way, right? And then that includes yourself. And so how do you move from that to the place of saying, but now that I know, I'm going to do better, right?
It's funny, Levi, I think my answer to you is pretty similar to something you said earlier today about talking less and listening more. I'm kind of a chameleon. I don't have a tribe. I'm adopted, and I grew up not knowing my ethnicity, and I got separated from anybody who would be a tribe. And that's been a superpower, actually. It means I can fit in anywhere. And I'm also an overachiever, and I have a ridiculous amount of energy, and I'm kind of smart, and yet I grew up with this sort of, the flag I plant on the hill is supporting the excluded and the marginalized and the underdog, because that's the people I grew up around, right? And so I have just been going for 49 straight years, carrying that flag up the hill, holding myself to the highest bar of accountability every minute of every day of every week of every year. And I have, in the last year, bumped up against a bunch of life events that just took me down to where I'm not marching up a hill, I'm not getting out of bed. And at first I treated it like something catastrophic that just happened to me. But in the last maybe 6 months, and as head towards that hill called 50, I have started saying, oh, wow, Leah, what if you didn't have to carry the flag so high, so long, so perpetually? And also, really, you can't, so get over yourself. And here's what happened in the absence of my marching up the hill. I looked around and I was surrounded by people who'd been marching up the hill right next to me, waiting.
Y'all giving me church today.
Wishing, begging that I would ask them to help carry the damn flag, right? And then, so I did. I was like, help, right? And all these people showed up. And then not only did they help carry the flag and I got to rest, I also saw they carried the flag differently than I did and better than I did. And guess what? They actually felt closer to me because I asked for help. And then the last big revelation for me is that, like, you cannot single-handedly manifest something meaningful. What you can do is be in the room and contribute your heart and your vulnerability and yourself and whatever wisdom you have today, and then discover what can be manifested, what is waiting there to be manifested, that is not forced and is not muscled and is not singular in vision, but is organic in scope, right? So that's, to me, the bonus I got for having a really rough year, is this epiphany that there's people all around you and there is manifestation happening, whether you think it is or not. And if you shut up and sometimes just lay down and ask for help, you get to be part of it.
People want to help real people, right? Like, as much as I want to be chosen, right? Like, but guess what? Tons of people referred me to be here. So I have, like, it's like we also have to make a choice, right? When do people realize that these institutions, they don't want you, right? When do I get help from Leah and Bo and Tommy? When do I get help from Krysta? I ask like Leah did. And I'm realizing my community is coming through for me in big ways right now. So the more y'all say no, the more these guys say yes. And the more I want to build with them. And I can make my own foundation instead of an institution, you know? Ooh, God bless y'all.
No, that's it's beautiful, and it's kind of wild because that leads into our final question in a really beautiful way, which we've been saying at the end of every panel. In what ways can these people in this room, your Giant Steps family, help you move forward in any way, shape, or form? Like, each one of you, what is the takeaway? What is something that we all can do for you?
And I guess it has to be specific. So as I think, I'm like...
As specific as you can make it.
Right. So I'm growing the next great Minnesota company, the fastest growing Jamaican restaurant in the world. And so I'm looking for any ambassadors who can help, one, spread the word, and two, I'm always looking for great people to help me think through things. So that help we're talking about, you know, I'm always looking for help, whether it's through internships or people who are just there to help support, social media support, or anything like that. So I'm always looking for good talent who can share our vision.
I'm at your restaurant all the time. I have to say, it's incredible. So if you guys haven't been to Pimento, I just got to do a plug because it's great.
Thank you so much, man.
Just have to say.
I think for me, I flourish when I'm in small conversations. And I think a lot of people are, I'm an introvert, so I have to really work myself up to be in spaces where I have to both talk or have to actually go and talk to people. So I would just really welcome more conversations and just, I really like to talk about everything, and I'm not short on ideas, if you know me. So I would really just find that, in particular for a creative community, to be thinking outside of even the container of the creative community, to think about that, because I work, and I think all of us on the sofa here have said, we work in multiple, both sectors and realms, and I really appreciate those conversations about, like, okay, what's the next thing to do now, right? What can we try, and what does that require, and what do you have, and what do I have? And so I would just really welcome more of that.
I have such a long list. I'll pick one thing. I guess, dovetailing on what I said earlier, I don't know. I walk around in the world really noticing a lot of self-righteousness out there on all sides of the issues. And I also notice a lot of hardness. Somebody earlier today talked about entering the world with hardness. And I notice it just driving on the freeway. I notice it at the post office. I notice it in the grocery store. I notice it online. Oh my God. Hardness, right? And I told you earlier, I'm the person who carries the flag, and I need help not carrying the flag so much. So I guess if there's something that would actually really specifically help me is if everybody could try to be a little more like water and be a little less hard, even with the people you think you disagree with. Just that.
I really like that.
Mine is, listen to my show if you get a chance. I wasn't there today, so wait till I get back home. No, but I like my co-host, so feel free. But it's TK in the AM. TK in the AM. We're live Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Your time would be 9 a.m. Bondfire Radio or TuneIn app. But also we archive as a podcast, so you could just look up TK in the AM. And if you like it, rate it somewhere. And if you don't, do like your mama said and keep it to yourself. But, and in general, if you like something, share and amplify it. I think for independent people, creative entrepreneurs, whatever it is, right? Restaurant, building movements. Girl, you gotta tell me again, because I was just taking in your church and I forgot what the church was.
Theater.
Theater, there it is. But share, amplify, share, amplify, share, amplify. I wouldn't know about his, look, you gave him the cosign, he's right on stage with me, I'm going. Yeah, so please, TK in the AM, share and amplify. Thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists. I think this has been a really wonderful panel. It's been very genuine. It's hard to be vulnerable and it's hard to be up here, but I just appreciate you all being open and honest. Shameless plug, November 10th at Ice House. Come see me sing for the last time here. But I want to say thank you to all of you, and please come up and talk to them and get to know them more. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Krysta.
Thank you.